Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So we are continuing with the masadir of the tafsir, sources of tafsir. And the fourth source is al-Lugah. So during the masadir of tafsir, the primary source of the Quran, then the Sunnah, Aqwal salaf, and now we're here on al-Lugah. Yes? So we have here, what does it mean by doing tafsir of the Quran using the Lugha? So tafsir al-Quran bil-Lugha هو بيان معاني القرآن الكريم بمدلول مفرداته is one element وتراكيبه في لغة العرب, and the way these words are structured. So let me give you an example, okay? So if we have, for example, here إياك نعبد, okay, there are two elements to this word, okay? One is iyaka, I mean, it's not much. There's obviously iyaka means you, okay? So first here is, what does abada ya'budu ibada mean? Ibada. What does ibada mean? So that's one aspect. What's the madlul? What is the intended meaning? What meaning does ibada depict? Yes? And the second aspect we have is the tarkib. What meaning? This taqdeem. This is taqdeem. Taqdeem of the maf'ulun bihi. What meaning does it give? What meaning does taqdeem of the maf'ul bihi give to the tarkib, the structure? So now we can say, if we analyze this verse, it has two aspects. We have to understand the word abada ya'budu, ibadatan. Linguistically, what does this mean? Or, secondly, is the iyaka na'bud, the structure of taqdeem, of having the tarkib of iyaka al-maf'ul bihi first, then the na'budu afterwards. What meaning does this give? So this is what we mean by using the lugha to depict the meaning of the Quran. Understood? So these two aspects. So that's why you need to know lugha, and you need to know ilm al-ma'ani, how the language is, the vocabulary, and also how these different words have different meanings. Okay? Following? Now, second thing we're discussing is the stages of tafsir al-Quran bil-Lugha, meaning not tafsir al-Quran, but the language. For example, the question I posed yesterday, can I pick up, I don't know, one of these kids' dictionaries and use the vocabulary in there and try to tafsir of the Quran? Can I pick up the handswear and try to tafsir using the handswear? What do we categorize as lugha? So what we say here is, what he's done in this book, I mean, this is a very, very simple and oversimplified, but at least it gives you an entry level to understanding. Don't think you know anything. You just get a rough idea of how we can codify, and you have to study this in much more detail later on. He said that we can have three levels, yes? The first is how the salaf, meaning Sahaba, Tabi'un, and Tabu Tabi'in, how their quotations, because they are Ahlul Lugha, but obviously the earlier generation the better, because Sahaba, amongst them, they were all Arabs. They all grew up with the Arabic language. Majority of the Arabs. I'm talking about the earlier, yes, the ulama of the Sahaba. So they were not, they knew the Quran. The Quran came in their language. They had the chance to ask. They could ask each other, ask the Prophet ﷺ. They knew this. They grew up in the Quraysh, in different qaba'il, who spoke this language, unadulterated. There was no influence from the Ajam, nothing. Yes. Then the second tabaqah. So this is three levels. Sahaba. Then we have the Tabi'in. But obviously in the Tabi'is time, there are Tabi'ut Tabi'i. There could be a bit of, but again, so now the Tabi'is, his lugha, depending on, now you have to analyze it a bit more. For example, let's say there's a person who converted very late, in a later age. Now his mastery of the language will obviously be secondary to a Sahabi. Yes? A Tabi'i who didn't grow up with the Arabic, became Muslim later on, compared to a Tabi'i who grew up with the Arabic language, his understanding of the lugha and the language will be better than somebody else. So as you go further away from the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ, you have more things to analyze. But these three groups on a whole, so even though they vary, these three groups on a whole, we don't need evidences for what they say. They themselves is evidence. It's like, for example, we as Muslims believe the Prophet ﷺ to be the messenger of Allah. So when we believe this, we don't need proof. So if we were to hear him directly, they would. So a hadith is not weak, the chain is weak. So for any hadith we have today, if we were to have a time machine and we travel back, and we hear from the Prophet ﷺ directly, it would either be yes, he said this, or no, he didn't say this. And there would be no weak, and it would just be yes, he said it, or no, he didn't say it. Or maybe somebody paraphrased it. So we get that. So when you hear it directly, we don't say, oh, this hadith is weak, or we don't believe this, then you become a kafir. The problem with this is the transmission. Yes? So he himself is evidence. When he says something, that's it, khalas. Similarly, in language, the earlier Arabs, pre-Islamic Arabs, the Shu'ara, etc., and the first three tabaqa, to some extent, and there's few analysis needs to be done there, they themselves are evidences. So for example, if Sayyiduna Ali radiyallahu ta'ala anhu says, this word means this, we don't have to ask him, where do you get this from? Because he himself is al-Lugah. Do you understand? If Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala said, this means this, we don't have to say, well, what's your evidence? He's al-Lugah, he knows what it means. As opposed to, if I say this word means this in a lecture or a dars, you can ask me, where do you get this from? I'm the al-Lugah. Yes? If Ibn Kathir, he comes 500 Hijri. If he says a word means this, we can say, well, where do you get this? Where do you get this from? We need evidence of this. Yes? So the first tabaqa, majority, they are Ahlul Lugha themselves. So we don't need evidences for what they say. What they say a verse means, because they understand the language. So they themselves are hujjah, they themselves are Ahlul Lisan. So just as poetry and pre-Islamic Jahili poetry is evidence for the word's meaning, they themselves are They themselves are evidences. Does that make sense? Yes?
The huruf don't change, so it's always rubba. Qawli, why is it majrur?
Yes, the pre-Islamic is also. But see, pre-Islamic Jahili poetry and language is not, they want to explain what it means, because obviously the Quran didn't exist then, is it? The Quran wasn't revealed then. The Quran existed, but not in the world. It wasn't revealed to the Prophet ﷺ then. But we can use their language to prove something. So for example, if the pre-Islamic, for example, when you do Hamasa, for example, you say, Dinna hum kama danu. So dinna, dana yadinu dinan. So they didn't use the word deen in religion or resurrection and day of qiyamah, recompense. They use it in poetry, meaning, if you find us and you try to attack us, we're going to attack you with dinna hum kama danu. We will take revenge from them, or we have taken revenge from them, just as they have taken revenge from us. So we understand, dinna, dana yadinu. The whole poem, this poet is speaking about the tribe attacked him and they attacked them again and took back their camels. That's what deen means. So we say retribution. So this poem is not telling us what the verse means, but we understand from this Jahili poetry how the Arabs use the word deen. Do you understand? Yes? So there wouldn't be a tafsir of the Quran, but we use it for tafsir of the Quran. Yes? So we can also say, for example, Jahili, Asrul Jahili, the Jahili poetry, Jahili language is also an evidence. Okay? The second place is where the ulama started to realize that the language is becoming adulterated, non-Arabs, the Ajam, and obviously language changes. Certain things you would say before, you can't say it now. The meaning of a word changes. I don't know if you can think of an example. The meaning of the word is changed. For example, like in certain decades, I don't know now, I don't know slang now, but this is wicked. So at one point in time, the word wicked meant evil and treacherous and very bad. And at one time it meant very good. So now the word has changed. The meaning of this word has changed. Do you understand? It's just certain words. I'm not really good at English. I don't know if you can think of any words which before meant something and now the connotations have changed. You can't use this word anymore. It's not seem appropriate, or it doesn't mean this anymore. Yes? I don't know. You get what I'm saying? Or for example, a tablet, the word tablet. So in 1990s, the word tablet, what did tablet mean in 1990s? When you're sick and you need medication, you have a tablet. Or a tablet can mean, what tablet mean, what Musa, like a tablet, you write chalk and tablet, you write on the tablet, you write on a slate. Now in 2020 or 2010, tablet only means one thing. When you say, kid, I got a tablet, I need my tablet. You need what? I need my computer, my iPad. Do you understand? So the word has changed. That's one example. Yes? Do you understand? Okay, so the language changes as time goes along. So they start to realize, okay, well, the usage, the Quranic usage, the way these words were used, they start to change as time evolves. So they started to preserve. So this group, the second group, they started to try and preserve this. Yes? So you have tadween, the era of tadween, where the ulama tried to collect, gather poetry, references, literature of these three people to preserve the language. So we know what these words mean and preserve it in its original sense. So later on, as time comes, time changes, word changes, words don't get lost, we know what it means. So they then tadween. Tadween means codification. They codified what was understood from these people, from the Jahili period, Sahaba, Tabi'i, and Tabi'i. Yes? Then the third period is where, okay, now these people then what? Test my, what's it supposed to be? How do I get for art? What's that supposed to be?
So how are you going to translate it?
No, what's it supposed to be? Ah, good. I can do an art. Yes, that's a book. So now these people, they codified it. They wrote books, they codified it, they had. So now now the third period is after them. We just read these books. We don't travel. So after the initial, so what is Waqt al-Tadween? That's another discussion. Some say 2nd century, 3rd century, how far? That's something to do with literature, we can do that later on. After this, you would then, nobody could travel to the villages and to the outskirts of the cities and the villages and the A'rab and try to understand what they use the words as. All we know is refer back to what these people codified, their tadween, and understand that and do tafsir. You get the three different stages. So one was those people who themselves were evidence. The Asr al-Jahili, they're not evidence as such, but we use their poetry as evidence. What the Prophet ﷺ said the verse means, what the Sahaba, Tabi'in, and Tabu Tabi'in, with varying levels of reliability and varying levels of, obviously because of different levels of Arabic. So these three, the next generation codified what was preserved from the Salaf and the Jahili period. And then afterwards, we have people who then use or refer to the codification to then understand the tafsir. So we can say here that the tafsir of Quran bil-Lugah, the Lugah went through 3 eras, and very simplified way. So anybody after the first 3 periods, after this period, whether it's Zamakhshari, whether it's Baghawi, whether it's Ibn Ashur, they will, when they do tafsir bil-Lugha, they're basically relying upon this tadween. Nobody goes on and finds the meaning of the word by listening to people, because that language is not spoken anymore. Yes? So for example, somebody in this period could say, oh, we heard a villager using this word, saying this poetry in the year 108 Hijri. So in the year 108 Hijri, this poem was used, and this poem kind of shows you the meaning of this word. Yes? 25 Hijri. Or yes? And obviously pre-Hijri is also established. So this period is still what? Okay, yeah. In this time, this person who was alive at this time, he said this poem, and this poem shows the meaning of this word. We see how the word is used. Yes? Afterwards, these people, because in my period, in my time, a poet in 888, a poet said this. He said, well, that poet, he's not evidence. He can only use the Arabic language how it's been coded before. He himself is not evidence that this word means this. Have you understood what's going on? Yeah, any questions before we move ahead?
Now, what kind
okay, now, when we do tafsir of the Quran using the Lugah, yes, we say here there are 3 categories. Either, and this is the majority, this is the ghalib, this is the majority of the times, the tafsir will be muwafiqan li qawlin min aqwali salaf. It matches, it adds up to the qawlan min aqwali salaf. Yes? So it's the same as a statement of the, so the lugha that we've received, whether it's in a poet form, whether somebody explains the meaning, it's the same as what somebody else said. So for example, you have a poem that shows the meaning of the word, and yes, Abdullah ibn Abbas said the same thing. Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said the same thing. Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala said the same thing. Sa'id ibn Jubair said the same thing. Masruq said the same thing. So yeah, so this lugha and this linguistic aspect that we've taken, it matches what they've said. So a majority of the lugha and the ijtihad and from using lugha will match up with qawl min aqwali salaf. Or we can have a linguistic analysis which either was not discussed by the salaf, or it is different, not contradictory to the qawl salaf. What is it? Different or not discussed. So the salaf never even discussed it. They just read it, they understood something, and they never thought of discussing it. Somebody later on said, well, this taqdeem gives this meaning. This word means this. If you do at-Tafseer, it can change the meaning. Yes? As long as it doesn't contradict the qawl salaf in this, or it doesn't contradict any like obvious other ayat or ahadith or principles of deen. And I'll give you examples later on. This is accepted as long as it's reasonable framework and other things are matched. And the third one is is a mistake here. Ayakuna mutanaqidan. It is mutanaqid. It's contrary to the aqwal salaf, or it's contrary to other usul of deen. So the first one is not going to give an example, because the first one, majority fit into this. We just discussed this and this. For example, in this verse, قَالُوا لَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى مَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالَّذِي فَطَرَنَا. There's only one qawl of Wahab ibn Munabbih, yes? But majority, nobody discussed this verse from the Salaf. They just read it. قَالُوا لَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى مَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَالَّذِي فَطَرَنَا. What came in their minds, we don't even know. They never said anything because it was probably obvious to them. But when we analyze it from a linguistic perspective, we say here, what is this wow? لَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى مَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ. We will never give you, the magician said, we will never give you preference over those signs which have come to us. وَالَّذِي فَطَرَنَا. So what kind of wow is this? Is this wow al-atf or is this wow al-qasam? What is this? Now the Salaf, there's no saying from them. So now both is lugha is sahih from the lugha, and both meaning are possible. If it says here, it says two possibilities. لَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى مَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَلَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى الَّذِي فَطَرَنَا. It means لَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى مَا جَاءَنَا مِنَ الْبَيِّنَاتِ وَلَن نُؤْثِرَكَ عَلَى اللَّهِ. We will never give you Fir'aun, even if you try to warn us, scare us, kill us, crucify us. We will never give you preference over the signs that have come to us. We will never give you preference over the verses that have come to us, and we will never give you preference over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second meaning is, we will never give preference to you. We will never choose you over the signs. Wallahi, walladhi fatarana, by the being who has created us. So now the tarkiba of the sentence now can be analyzed different ways. There's nothing from the Salaf. And kullun sahih, because both have possibilities. So now this is also maqbool. Yes? There's nothing from the Salaf regarding this. So now we refer back to this. And we say, well, is there any problem in taking any meaning? Say no. Both meanings will be fine. So you say, well, this is sahih. We can take this tafsir using the lugha and linguistics. Yes? So even though there's nothing from the Salaf regarding this, we can say both tafsirs is okay. An example of something which is not, seems questionable is this one. So it is narrated, some books have mentioned that muttaka'a wa atadat lahunna muttaka'a. She prepared for them a muttaka'a wa huwa al-utruj, citron. So some tafsir said muttaka'a means citron. But linguistically the word muttaka is not citron. Citron, ittaka'a yattaka'u, ittaka is to lean back. Look in the hadith, kana Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam muttaki'an fajalasa. He was relaxing and sitting back, fajalasa. So muttaka'a, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala said, huwa al-majlisul mu'add a gathering or a seating, like a prepared for everybody. So muttaka doesn't mean utruj. We haven't heard that in linguistics. We have heard the word utruj, muttaka'an doesn't mean citron. Muttaka means a place of gathering. Do you understand? But some people have narrated this, even from Abdullah ibn Abbas himself. So what it says is possible that it got paraphrased. Muttaka doesn't mean utruj, but it probably means that in the muttaka, in the dawah, in the feast, in the banquet, there were citrons as well. Yes? Because what's the next verse? وَآتَدَتْ لَهُنَّ مُتَّكَأً وَآتَتْ كُلَّ وَاحِدَةٍ مِّنْهُنَّ سِكِّينًا. So there's a muttaka, and there's a gathering, there's a banquet, and she gave everyone a knife to do what? So say in the muttaka there was a utruj. So we say possible, we don't have to reject the utruj and the citron meaning. We simply say the muttaka doesn't mean citron. Muttaka means a gathering. Linguistically, muttaka means gathering. Yes? However, this utruj is probably what was within the gathering. That's why the word utruj has crept into the tafsir. But muttaka linguistic does not mean utruj. So this linguistic doesn't match up with the, so this linguistic analysis of utruj is ghayr sahih unless you do ta'wil and say within the muttaka this was utruj. Yes? You understand that? So you get so majority of the tafsir bil-Lugha will match up and some will contradict some other. So Abdullah ibn Abbas, this contradicts, utruj contradicts what Abdullah ibn Abbas says. He says it's majlis al-mu'ad. So a gathering and citron, one is a banquet and one is food. So it can't be both. Unless you say the citron was within the muttaka. So now this tafsir bil-Lugha is khilafun li aqwali salaf. So it's mardud on its own. We can interpret it and say, well, probably the mufassir who mentioned this, they didn't mean that it was a muttaka. Well, it meant utruj, but it means within the muttaka, within the banquet and the feast, there was citron. That's how we're going to tatbiq of it.
Not only
Are you following?
Yeah, the whole thing. The whole thing.
Yes.
Now break down what you do.
No. How's your revision going?
So وَالَّذِي فَطَرَنَا can be two possibilities. One is atf. Yes.
Say that. Break down.
And the second is qasam. We will not give you preference over anything. Wallahi, ay, by the one, this is waw qasam, mawsul sila, by the one who created us. We swear by the one who created us. Understood?
Who knows Shaheed?
And the last thing is you have to remember that this is why studying the Arabic language is very, very important. Sometimes we just overlook it and just quickly do a bit of basic Arabic and then just go on to Quran translation. But the majority of the istidlal and understanding the meanings of the Quran is from Lugha. Because we mentioned before, the aqwalu salaf and aqwalu Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam is very little, very few compared to. And then even within that, the aqwalu salaf, majority of it is also based on Lugha. And many places there's no aqwalu salaf, we refer back to the Lugha. So understanding the language, the structure, the tarakib is very, very important. Yes, so it's very, very important to understand the Arabic language to understand the Quran directly, properly. That's what he's saying here, that the aqwalu salaf is few and majority of it is jullu tafasir aqwali salaf tafsirun bil misal. They normally give you examples that it can mean this, it can refer to this. This is one element, but and all of it usually boils down to the language of the Quran.
Okay, we'll leave it there.
Understood? So this is where we have reached so far. So now we've covered very briefly the parameters of using the Lugha to understand the tafsir of the Quran. Alhamdulillah. Any questions?
An-nasu mubtada a'da'u lima jahidu.
Any questions? Everybody understood?
Khabar is broken down into man'ud na.
Okay.
Is broken down.
Subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.